Привіт. I'm Chuck Olenek, a Ukrainian-American who was baptized with the name Yaroslav, which is the name I use in the historical reenactment group, the Society for Creative Anachronism. Besides being exposed to a bunch of things Slavic while growing up, I was also a history teacher professionally, and I would dress for the time period, so historical reenactment's a no-brainer for me. What I decided to do when I retired was to continue dressing up, but I didn't have the classroom to do that in. I wanted to tell the stories and tell them in garb. And I've been working on Slavic mythology and folklore under the umbrella title Tales of the Borderland, and I also started to include a history portion that's largely been dealing with Kievan Rus. So in the previous video of, as far as the history part, I followed basically the career of Volodymyr the Great. Okay, well now we're going to continue with a number of his sons, because Volodymyr the Great, he was the Grand Prince of Kyiv from 980 to 1015, and he was the father of 11 princes by 5 different wives, including Sviatopolk I and Yaroslav the Wise and Mstislav Volodymyrovich and Saints Boris and Gleb. And this is going to concentrate largely on those sons. So hope you stick around and watch this. The lineage itself isn't all that clear. Sviatopolk may have been the eldest. He may also have been the son of Sviatopolk, Volodymyr's half-brother and their father's lawful heir. What muddies the waters is that after Volodymyr had Sviatopolk murdered, he married Sviatopolk's widow, Irina, who gave birth to Sviatopolk. Then there's Rogneda of Polotsk, who was forced into marriage with Volodymyr, and she's going to give birth to Yaroslav the Wise and Mstislav of Chernihiv. The mother of Boris and Gleb, in some sources, was Adela, and in other sources it said that Gleb, the younger of the brothers, was the son of Anna, and there were 9 daughters as well. That's going to set the stage for all sorts of dynastic issues and all sorts of squabbles between the siblings. It's going to make Game of Thrones look like a tea party. Okay, towards the end of his life, Volodymyr's sons, Sviatopolk of Turiv and Yaroslav the Wise, who's in Novgorod, they're going to start challenging Volodymyr's rule. And there's going to be all sorts of drama coming out of this. So Sviatopolk gets married to the daughter of Poland's Boleslaw the Brave. And dissatisfied with Volodymyr and encouraged by his Polish wife and by Reinburn, who was the Bishop of Kolbern, Sviatopolk began preparations for war against Volodymyr. He's probably counting on support from his father-in-law. Well, it doesn't take Volodymyr long to figure out Sviatopolk's intentions, and he's going to end up throwing Sviatopolk, his Polish bride, and Reinburn in prison, where Reinburn's going to basically, pass on. And not long before Volodymyr's death, Sviatopolk was freed from prison by Volodymyr. By around that time, that's around like 1014, Yaroslav the Wise, who's up in Novgorod, who's supposed to be paying tribute to Dad, stops paying tribute. Well, now that Sviatopolk has been chastised, Volodymyr decides to go after his other insolent son Yaroslav, and he begins gathering his forces together, and he's rebuilding bridges, and he wants to make this a nice direct route to Novgorod to go get his son. But on July 15th of 1015, Volodymyr dies. Okay. Sviatopolk's retinue, they decide to conceal Volodymyr's death to prevent him from claiming the Kievan throne. When Sviatopolk learns of Volodymyr's demise, he seizes the power in Kyiv as quickly as he can, and the citizens of Kyiv aren't really thrilled with Sviatopolk. So what he will start doing is he's going to start distributing presents in order to win them over. He's also going to decide, these brothers of mine are inconvenient. And he plans to get rid of Boris, Gleb, and Sviatoslav, who also have claims to the throne, and that kind of threatens his power. And Boris, who's ruling the town of Rostov, he's going to be the most dangerous to Sviatopolk. And part of the reason is he's actually in charge of Volodymyr's Druzhina, his personal guards, and the army, and he has a lot of support from the citizens. From the primary chronicle. When Boris returned with the army without meeting the Pechenegs, he received the news that his father was dead. He mourned deeply for him, for he was beloved of his father before all the rest. When he came to the Alta, he halted. His father's retainers then urged him to take his place in Kyiv on his father's throne, since he had at his disposal the latter's retainers and troops. But Boris protested, "Be it not for me to raise my hand against my elder brother. Now that my father has passed away, let him take the place of my father in my heart." When the soldiery heard these words, they departed from him, and Boris remained with his servants. But Sviatopolk was filled with lawlessness. Adopting the device of Cain, he sent messages to Boris that he desired to live at peace with him, but he plotted against him. So Sviatopolk came by night to Vyshhorod. After secretly summoning to his presence Pucha and the men of Vyshhorod, he then commanded them to say nothing to any man, but to go and kill his brother Boris. Boris and his manservant are stabbed to death while asleep in the tent. Actually, in the primary chronicle, there's a whole lot of praying that Boris is doing, so there's a lot of quotes from the Bible. But, okay, Boris and his manservant get stabbed, and he's placed in a body bag. Well, it's discovered en route that he's still breathing while he's being transported back to Kyiv, so the Varangians stick a sword in him and end his life. Now we switch over to Gleb. Okay, he's sent for by Sviatopolk, who ruled, so Gleb is ruling the eastern town of Murom. And he still believes his father's alive, and he's rushing to his father's deathbed. Well, on the way there, his brother Yaroslav learns of what Sviatopolk has done and the murder of Boris, and he's urging Gleb, don't meet with him. Well, Gleb goes anyway to meet with Sviatopolk, and he gets intercepted along the way. From the primary chronicle. While he was thus praying amid his tears, there suddenly arrived those sent by Sviatopolk for Gleb's destruction. These emissaries seized Gleb's boat and drew their weapons. The servants of Gleb were terrified, and the impious messenger, Gorieser, gave orders that they should slay Gleb with dispatch. Then Gleb's cook, Torchen by name, seized a knife and stabbed Gleb. Now the impious and evil Sviatopolk killed Sviatoslav in the Hungarian mountains after causing him to be pursued as he fled into Hungary. The impious Sviatopolk thus began his reign in Kyiv. Assembling the people, he began to distribute gold to some and furs to others, and thus dissipated a large sum. This cold-blooded reprisal of Sviatopolk's earns him the nickname the Accursed. And news of the murder of the three brothers, that's going to reach Yaroslav, who's currently up in Novgorod as prince, and he decides to go to war against Sviatopolk. And he's got the support of the citizens of Novgorod, and he's got the support of Varangians. And there's a battle that takes place in 1016, not far from Lubeck, near the Dnipro River. And Sviatopolk is defeated, and he runs away to Poland to hide out with his in-laws. In 1018, after licking his wounds, Sviatopolk returns to Rus with the help of Boleslav's army. It could have been between 2,000 and 5,000 Polish warriors, in addition to 1,000 Pechenegs and 300 German knights and 500 Hungarian mercenaries. Not much is known of Yaroslav's forces, but he had to act defensively. The Russian Primary Chronicle gives a different version of events in which both armies were ready for combat, but they were separated by a river before Boleslav, enraged by insults from across the river, charged with his army, surprising Yaroslav and scattering his forces. Doesn't matter which accounts you look at, they all pretty much agree that the Polish prince was victorious in battle, and Yaroslav, instead of retreating to Kyiv, because remember he's prince there right now, but he's been defeated. He doesn't go there. He goes to Novgorod, and he was considering going overseas, and there was to recruit more Varangians. But according to the Primary Chronicle, the citizens of Novgorod, led by a posadnik named Konstantin Dobrinich, pressured him to take the fight right back to Boleslav and Sviatopolk. And Boleslav and his army are going to remain in Kyiv for some time. While the Poles had been in Kyiv for several months, they made themselves real unpopular. And the citizens of Kyiv were really upset, beginning to rise up. And so what ends up happening is Boleslav ends up leaving, and he's going to get involved with a conflict with the Holy Roman Emperor. And because the Polish forces are gone, Sviatopolk is unable to hold Kyiv. Sviatopolk's going to return with a Pecheneg army. Hey, the Pechenegs, these were the enemies of Kyiv. And they're going to attack Yaroslav on the Altar River. Once again, Sviatopolk's defeated, and he flees to Poland yet again. This time he dies along the way in July of 1019. Interestingly enough, some later sources blame Yaroslav for the murder of Gleb and maybe another brother, but maybe that's getting into the revisionist history. Boris and Gleb received the crown of martyrdom in 1015. After he came to power, Yaroslav actively sought the canonization of the princes. Meanwhile, the memory of the brothers had captured the imagination of the Kievan Rus population, in large measure because of the accounts of the calmness and the resignation with which they had accepted their deaths. The brothers became known as the Strastoterpsi, the passion bearers, since they did not resist evil with violence. The brothers were canonized by the Orthodox Church in 1071. The Catholic Church got around to it in 1724. And their relics were housed in the Church of St. Basil in Vyshhorod, which was later destroyed. And their feast day, July 24th. Okay, now we're settling into the next reign, which is going to be the reign of Prince Yaroslav the Wise. Hope you stick around and watch the channel.